One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's live edition of DTRH. It is February 11th, 2013. And tonight, for the next 2 hours, I am joined by my guest, Mr. Len Osanic, who has been on the broadcast before, and I am honored to bring him back to the airwaves for your listening pleasure. Len, welcome back.
Good to be back. Thank you for having me.
There's a ton of stuff that I want to get into. So first and foremost, before I forget, let's get into your newest project right now that you're working on, which is 50 Reasons for 50 Years. And that's obviously in regards to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So what exactly is 50 Reasons for 50 Years?
Well, it's a reaction, a backlash to the incredible, the Dallas, the people of Dallas trying to take back Dealey Plaza for the next week. This coming Dallas, sorry, let me start over. This coming November 22nd, the Dallas has blocked out the whole grassy knoll and excluded anyone from having any kind of moment of silence there. And usually a lot of people like Copa, Lancer, other people travel to Dallas to meet there on November 22nd to pay a tribute and have a moment of silence. And there's some lectures and that. And this year they blocked it out. And they continue to parrot with the sixth floor museum that the lone not did it, that Lee Oswald did this. And, you know, with Vincent Bugliosi and Tom Hanks is doing a show now, it's going to be called Parkland, explaining how Lee Oswald did this. I mean, year after year, they keep up with this crazy propaganda. So with the help of filmmaker Jeff Carter, we sat down and talked about, well, what can we do? And really, let's do a weekly little time capsule, a little tiny segment, an episode of some item of why the Warren Commission is a complete fraud, a lie perpetrated on America and the world. And we'll just pummel back. You know, we have an introduction and we'll have a conclusion, and we'll make those a little longer. But each episode is meant to be about 3 minutes long, just short attention span for someone to say, is what they just said, is that true? And be, you know, the tip of the iceberg, food for thought. So people will look into everything we talk about. Were there witnesses that knew ahead of time that the president was going to be killed? You know, just a host of topics. So I sent out on my Facebook page at Black Op Radio for people to come up with, without telling them what I was going to do, what was your number one reason that you don't believe the Warren Commission? And for me, it's Commission Exhibit 399. And that magic bullet. When somebody holds up that bullet, you see it there. There's no way that bullet did any of that stuff. I mean, if you know anything about bullets, you could drop it and make more of a dent on the tip than that thing was shot into a bucket of water or cotton wadding or something. And so week after week, we are hitting back, and we're up to around week 10 now, I guess. So we started last November 22nd, and we're going to end this year. So hopefully, as people new to the case come on and watch something, they might not want to watch a whole movie, but they might watch a segment and be inclined to watch the next segment. So I didn't know. Is that true? And that's what I hope happens.
Well, I could tell you what, I've watched. The only one I haven't seen is the newest one that's come out yet. I've seen all the others, and so far, I'm impressed because, first of all, the production quality of it's not YouTube-ish garbage. It's like a step up. When I say YouTube-ish garbage, I'm not making fun of any YouTubers out there. I'm one, and my video editing skills only go to a certain level. So I'm certainly not like Pixar animation or anything like that. But if you've ever seen Len's stuff, it doesn't look like a crappy YouTube video or something like maybe I would slap together. It's almost the production value of a 3.5-minute video is that of something you'd see on a high quality DVD. So that keeps people, visually glued to it. And then the information that you put in there, you're right to the point. You don't dick around. You just get right straight to the point. You throw it out there. And I think that's good because that tantalizes people, kind of whets their appetite a little bit, which is the whole point, right? That you want to give them to go, hey, look at this. Maybe you should look into this a little further. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say I'm the host. So I have an introduction where, we have some theme music. So we've written some theme music, and we also have a little collage, intro music. And then I introduced each segment. And we do get right to the point. I mean, I have like 20 seconds to tell you this is what we're talking about today, and here's the expert. And we have asked like forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht, Robert Groden, Jim DiEugenio, Dick Russell. I mean, there's a host of people, and we don't have that many duplications, so you can count on 40 different guests that are going to go right to the point of their expertise in the field. And when I have set up the script with some of them, I said, listen, I want you to talk for around 5 minutes. I don't want a half hour, or I don't want an hour interview. I want you to tell me what are the talking points of this item. And we get down on them, and then we even edit it a bit further so that, there's a lot on YouTube, like you're saying. There's a lot of different sources of things. And you watch something that, somebody's put together, and it's an hour and a half video, and you only want to watch a certain section or it repeats itself. These things are very short. And like I'm mentioning again, they're meant to be just the tip of the iceberg. Here's a topic, and let's talk about the gun or the bullet trajectory. I mean, we'll have Jesse Ventura as a host for that episode, as a guest speaker, because on his show Conspiracy Theory, he actually got the gun, the same kind of ammunition, and he got up on a big scaffolding or some kind of lift and shot down at targets. And he thought the gun was a pile of crap. There's no way it could have done the shooting. They did it. They timed it. And so he was expert enough to say, I fired that gun, and I can tell you my observations and comments about it. There's no way it could happen. There's just no way. So once you start looking at the medical evidence, the acoustical evidence, the evidence like as the gun, and then, was Lee Oswald even there? And could anybody even do the shooting in that time frame? I mean, here's 50 reasons. And are you kidding me, Dallas? In the year 2013, you're going to still cling to Gary Mack, the propagandist? I mean, Gary was a researcher for a long time in the JFK community until he got the job offer, which they offered to Robert Groden first for $200,000 a year. And then Robert said, I can't change my view. They said, no, you have to be totally neutral. What we want is to take away the stigma of the assassination. So we're going to make the 6th floor museum, and we're going to say, well, if it was just a fluke, a crazy guy out of a window took a shot, it's not really our fault. So we're going to do everything we can to distance the city of Dallas from the crime. Instead of saying the police chief, the mayor, everybody was, had a hand to play unwittingly, but accessories after the fact for sure.
I really like how you break it down, and it's each individual thing, and not if you focus on the gun or the bullet itself, it's not muddied up by something to deal with a Parkland fact or a fact dealing with perhaps something in the quote unquote sniper's nest. I like how each individual factoid in itself, like you said, could be that one straw that breaks the camel's back for somebody. Maybe it's not a big deal about the different things with Oswald's background here and there. Okay, maybe those red flags aren't enough for somebody, but perhaps somebody seeing the magic bullet and listening to the evidence about how it's just impossible that bullet did all that damage and looked like that. Just there's no way that happened. So if you break it down, especially with the JFK assassination, you can do this with 9/11 too, which I think actually would be a good idea and a good way to break it down and explain it to people, because that's another event that's so huge and there's just so many details that somebody could get lost in. Like, I could have a conversation with you for 15, 20 minutes and make a video out of it, and we could cover 15 different things in the JFK assassination. But will anybody listening really take away all 15 different things, or will they maybe take away 2 or 3 of them? So I think actually that's a better way you've done it. You've broken it down to where each video is for the short attention span, but right to the point, and it gives hard-hitting info that makes you go, piques your interest, makes you want to look into it a little further. So I think it's well done.
Yeah, and also, credit has to go to also Jeff Carter, because he's working on it with me, and he talked to me about maybe a year or even 2 years beforehand. He just sent me an email. Hey, I'm a fan of the show. I've been listening, and let's do something. Let's do something else. And every now and then, people would email me something with, I'd like to make a documentary. This is a really big thing. And although we're doing this on a shoestring budget, we do manage to pull these episodes off. They are in a certain order, by the way, as well. They don't just, just talk about the assassination. We've planned them to kind of build. So if you start at episode 1, you kind of learn in, I think, a proper context why these different things matter. That when you're going to get to the 50th episode in the conclusion, why it puts it in a really organized time frame, that the things don't jump around. And we have little discussions about them, but they're very friendly, and me and Jeff, we both know the topic very well, yet, we still say, well, can't we put this, well, it's mostly me, let's put episode 30, let's make it 25, and no, it's got to be, this is the order I see it, so it's good, and let me go with that point further. When you do have an hour documentary, let's say somebody approached me and says, Len, I've got a chance to do an hour documentary. Well, if you're talking about television, you're going to take commercial breaks, right? Then what are you talking about? Maybe only 44 minutes. And then out of the 44 minutes, you've got to start with, well, here's our introduction. We're laying the groundwork for our theory and our discussion. And you can't put so much in there. By doing it weekly and having just a time frame of, let's say, 3 to 5 minutes, and they all seem to be running a little long, but we don't have anybody to answer to, so we don't have to watch the stopwatch. Just that I don't want them to be long. I want them to be to the point, and then week after week, the reader, the listener, the viewer can make up their mind, right? But it's absurd that it takes amateur, interested people such as us to do this when the government, every agency, has failed. The FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, everything you think is there to protect you, is working against you. And I do mean working against you. And that's why if you read a couple of books by Mark Lane, you'll see the opposition. He's come up, CIA documents saying how to handle criticism of critics. And but the only person that's made any mainstream news is maybe Jesse Ventura or Alex Jones. And Alex has the unfortunate baggage that he yells a little bit so, people can write him off easy. But, I think he's done really good work, and he's put out a lot of documentaries too. I mean, Peter Joseph, who did Zeitgeist, did a phenomenal job, and his first hour-and-a-half video was basically into 3 sections. He couldn't understand why people were believing the mythology of 9/11, and how can people believe something that's just not true. So he broke it down into 3 things. Well, I guess people start believing with religion, and here's their belief, and why do they believe that? And if you've watched Zeitgeist 1, you know that. Then there's the 9/11, where he basically just has a paragraph and goes into it line by line and says, but these are beliefs, they're not true. And then he talks, a very good description of the monetary system, why people are willing to, trade their work for paper, and as long as other countries keep buying the American dollar or trading that paper around, it'll be worth something. The minute they don't, the minute China or somebody else says, in fact, that's what happened to Iraq, I think. I think they said they were trading oil with the euro only. They were going off the American dollar, and it wasn't too far off. They got invaded and attacked. And I think that's more of the reason.
Yeah, every time that the dollar's backing seems to get screwed with, that seems to be a catalyst for some sort of major event. Hey, look, even Kennedy, he was printing the Kennedy greenbacks. He was gonna supposedly, I mean, we really never got a chance to see it, right? Because they blew his head off. But he was supposedly going to get rid of the Federal Reserve, phase them out however he planned on doing it. He was getting rid of the CIA, scattering it to the winds. What did he say? We're going to break it into 1 million pieces and scatter it to the winds or something to that effect? I mean, that's what he was literally doing all this. Although the CIA thing did get bogged down. Even Fletcher, I know, had talked about that, how there was a lot of bureaucratic resistance, like people on the resistance from people on the inside that made things go from point A to point B on the bureaucratic level. So, which is to be expected, right? That they would slow it up enough. Hey, well, you guys don't have to stop it blatantly; just slow it up enough, and that buys whoever enough time to do whatever they're doing. So, because as soon as Kennedy got assassinated, everything changed. Everything. The Vietnam War got amped up. Everything just went into, complete 180 degrees. And the world is what we know it today. And I'm not saying that if Kennedy had lived and served another term, that the world would be great and there'd be sunshine all the time and unicorns that farted rainbows. I'm not saying that. Okay, all I'm saying is it would be different than what we have today. And today is pretty effed up. So anything might be better, right? Maybe it would be worse. Who knows? But it would be interesting to say the least. What say you, Len?
Well, I don't know how it would be worse, but Kennedy had a vision. He talked about the new frontier. In his final speeches, he was talking about, we live on the same planet, we breathe the same air, we drink the same water. We've got to start getting along. And among some of the things that frighten these people that want to trick you into giving your life up to the military and fighting a war for some Rockefeller or some other monetary fight is that Kennedy had he was going to end this. What he did against the CIA and against all this other forms of liars in the government, he put in a hotline. He started saying, like, when I want the straight goods, I want to pick up a phone and talk to Khrushchev or whoever right away. I want to say, is this true? Did you just launch missiles? Did you, and the minute you cut out all those middlemen, and I think the thing that Alan Dulles had figured out with the CIA was that they'd be in charge of estimating the enemy. They would say, well, we've estimated the Soviet Union's gross national product, and they're spending 5% of that on their defense or something, or whatever the number is. Well, we better be at least spending 10%. Or when they report to Kennedy and say, well, they have 200 bombers, we better have 300 bombers, And then you find out that the Soviet Union had like 12, or their nuclear program was not anything that the Americans were. But by the time that Kennedy got briefed and some of these guys, I know in the very beginning of the of the Cuban Missile Crisis that I watched a very telling interview with the fellow that was a photographic interpreter. And he said when he first brought the pictures over and when they blew them up, to brief Kennedy to say, we think they're building nuclear missile silos and sites there, right? He did the briefing and all that. And then Kennedy said, he pulled me aside and he said, I want to talk to you privately. And we ran around a corner, and he didn't really understand why he wasn't going to talk in front of all the generals and that. And he said, he looked him in the eye and said, are you sure? Are you sure of this? Right? And he said, well, I developed the film personally, President, sir. Meaning that Kennedy, I think that he thought the CIA would even doctor negatives and give them to somebody to make a presentation that he would start a war over something that was never there. And, we've heard about that happening with the Gulf of Tonkin and other episodes. But I don't know if that guy knew how on the nail he was when Kennedy came to him and he said, here's a strange thing. He asked me a couple of times privately, are you sure? Did you get the negatives? Did they come out of the plane? Who developed them? Like, he didn't believe that really this is happening, right? And I just thought that was a funny anecdote, that Kennedy was going to question his own people to make sure that he wasn't being tricked again by the CIA.
Yeah, and I don't think any president since then has done anything like that. Perhaps there's evidence to show that Nixon was set up with the Watergate thing, and people say, well, are you defending Nixon, Popeye? No. I'm just saying I think he was starting to look into the Kennedy assassination a little bit too much. Perhaps and maybe whatever else he was connected to. He was connected to Operation 40 from back in the Eisenhower days. So who knows exactly how many bodies he knew where they were buried, whatever you want to call it. But I think, and I've seen enough evidence to show that I think Nixon was set up with Watergate, to get him out. And I think part of it was because he was starting to delve into the what they call it the whole Bay of Pigs thing. Or they referenced the assassination.
Like you mentioned, I think there was a code word that he knew where the bodies were. He knew what was going on, and that was his message to the agency that he could start talking if he had to. But
I'm going to cut us off right there, Len, because we got the break sneaking up on us. So we can pick it up right there when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. When we get back, we have another hour and a half with Len Osanic. Go check out Prouty.org, blackopradio.com. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Before the break snuck up on us, just as we were going into break, I was saying how I think Nixon was set up because of what he was looking into when it came to the assassination of President Kennedy, and perhaps because of he knew where the bodies were buried, quite literally. And Len, you were about to give me and the listeners your take on that, and the break cut us off. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
Right, I think I was just making the observation that there had been so many assassinations that I think they decided to take out Richard Nixon in a different method, and they had him removed.
Oh, that's interesting. Like character assassination rather than physical assassination.
Well, there's a lot wrong with the whole Watergate break-in. It's as if that some people were set up to get caught, if you really look into it. So I think that whole thing was an operation in itself. And, there's several books to that point of view that, it was meant to end up with Nixon being ousted.
Any in particular that you would recommend the listener go get, maybe as a way to start to research that a little further?
Geez, the names escape me right now. I can't.
I'm sure they just Google Nixon Watergate, right? Or Nixon Watergate conspiracy. I'm sure that'll pop up.
Yeah. The removal of a president, right? Things like that.
Yeah. And by the way, character assassination it seems to be their new way of doing it, rather than physically assassinating the president. In the 60s, between Jack, Bobby, and Martin, they killed Malcolm X too. When you research that, you find out that was set up too. I think that they started to realize that people weren't buying the lone nut thing. You can only use that so many times, so they had to change it up. So rather than physical assassination, you assassinate the person's character, which is just as effective. It's a good way to keep people in line. They use it to this day to keep senators and congressmen and stuff in line, right? They don't physically kill them in a car accident anymore, because that would be, and once in a while they do. I mean, usually it's not a car accident, though. Usually it's some plane accident. They have to be flying in some, dual engine, small plane, little Cessna or whatever, and the thing happens at, like Paul Wellstone. Jim Fetzer actually wrote a good book about Paul Wellstone's death. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't read it, and regardless of whether or not you like Jim Fetzer's work on 9/11 or anything else, just go read the book on Wellstone's murder, because even if you don't believe Fetzer, the facts are all there. And I got to tell you, the facts speak for themselves. And when you see a lot of these senators and congressmen, or in the one IT guy that he was going to, I know he had talked to I don't know if it was like a Senate subcommittee or whatever, about hacking the voting
elections,
machines. Yeah, and how he had written the source code, and it was hidden. The program that he wrote to switch the votes was hidden inside Diebold's source code, and or it would be hidden in any of the machine's source code, not just Diebold, but it would be hidden in the voting machine itself's source code. And if the company didn't give you access to it, then you wouldn't know. And then he was supposed to testify again, and in between the two times, he dies in a single-engine plane crash. That seems to be the new way of doing it. They either take you out in a plane crash, or if they can't get you in a plane crash like that, they seem to assassinate your character. I wonder if John Corzine, though, was a target, now that I think about it, because he had some horrific car accident back when he was the governor of Jersey, and he's connected to that whole MF Global thing, where they bilked people for billions of dollars, or millions at least, or whatever it was. And it makes one wonder if they rigged his car, and if somebody was trying to take him out. So it's the same thing: car accidents, plane crashes, and then character assassination. They just don't shoot you in the head by a lone gunman anymore. I think it's a little too obvious. What do you think? I think after the '60s, that 10-year period there, they kind of played their hand too much.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's a couple of books I was thinking about, and Jim Hogan is the author's name, who has written on Watergate.
I'm writing that down. Jim Hogan. So I'm going to go check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, check that out. Jim Hogan. And check out like Watergate / conspiracy / removal of a president, Nixon, JFK, whatever. You'll see there's a ton of evidence to support that. I mean, not that Nixon didn't have blood or dirt on his hands, but it makes one wonder why they went after him. What was the whole point of it? That whole Cold War era was really filled with a lot of I don't want to call it cloak and dagger, but a lot of intrigue, to set the tone, if that's the way you want to set it. There's a lot of secrets that nobody knows that went on behind the scenes during the Cold War. A lot of things that were nefarious.
Oh, you just triggered my memory. The name of the book is actually Secret Agenda. Yeah, Secret Agenda, Watergate, Deep Throat, and the CIA.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Secret Agenda, Watergate, Deep Throat, and the CIA.
And that's from, I think, in the 80s he wrote that, but very interesting research.
Yeah, I honestly think that Nixon knew too much. I think he, A, knew too much, and B, was starting to dive into things and look into things, and perhaps they had decided he had outlived his usefulness, and it was time for him to go, which eventually happens to most of these guys. Unless there's someone like Poppy Bush who seems to stick around forever like a cockroach. But most of these guys, unless they're well-liked and connected, or at least the older generations anyway, it seems that once they outlived their usefulness, at least in that time frame, they were removed and just, not even treated with dignity or respect. I remember when I was a kid, the biggest event Richard Nixon had going was if he was doing a book signing. Because he had released a book And I remember he was doing some book tour, and that was like the biggest thing was the ex-president was coming to town, and he was hawking his book. I mean, that's pretty pathetic if you're an ex-president. So you can see they kind of relegate you to the dustbin of history now once they're done using you. You know, sticking on the Cold War, I want to touch on Gary Powers' U-2 flight. And I don't care how much time it takes. We can even go into the next hour with it because we have the whole second hour. So if we have to devote the entire rest of the segment here to it, we can. I've had Gary's son on, I think it was last year. I want to say like April or May of last year, somewhere around that time. Maybe it was March. Somewhere around the beginning of last year, like the first quarter of last year. Anyway, he was talking about, he had apparently heard, I had played the audio from one of the videos about Gary Powers' flight from your collection there. And I had played a couple minutes of audio explaining Fletcher's view on the whole Gary Powers thing. And he had said that that was, although he did respect Prouty's work on many things, he said that was the one thing that Prouty was wrong about was the whole U-2 flight and how it went down. Now, I'm not sure, honestly, what to believe because both sides seem credible. But I mean, the story isn't that different. Everything seems to match up except for a few certain things here and there, which do change. You know, it does end up changing the outcome of the story a bit drastically. But most of the stuff pretty much adds up, matches up, except for things like I know Fletcher said that it was sabotaged and then forced to fly down lower, and then it was escorted down because then they'd be able to catch it and escort it down. And the thing he couldn't take off, I think it was the fuel, if I remember correctly. And his son said to know that wasn't the case. I think that he said that, if I remember correctly. Now I haven't listened to the interview, but if I remember correctly, I think he said that it was shot down. So what's the story? What say you? I know you interviewed Colonel Prouty. We've gone over that, in depth. What do you think about what's your take on it as a researcher, in your own right? Because I respect what you have to say. And then what did Fletcher have to say about it?
Well, first of all, I would say I have not found Fletcher to be wrong at all. And Fletcher's told me things that at first they sound, contrary to what you were told and heard. But it's kind of interesting that the two sides are so opposite. And when you were just making that analogy, I was just thinking about 9/11. Well, if somebody new to 9/11 said, well, we heard it was these Saudi Arabian hijackers and bin Laden wanted U.S. troops off of Holy Land, right? And so that's why they did this. And then you find out that, well, who funded these? Who got these guys in? And the whole thing is it just you can't really believe the first thing put out by the government, and it's gotten so bad that I think you have to distrust the story. And the story here is that Gary Powers was shot down at 70 or 80,000 feet. Now, it doesn't really matter if you subscribe to that and you say, okay, well, he was shot down, and then they grabbed him, and then later they traded him for a Soviet prisoner. But the story that Fletcher tells, and this is the big picture, not the minutia. The big picture is that this was a planned event. This was some generals reacting behind Eisenhower's back to sabotage the crusade for peace. And they didn't want this to pick up the momentum that was going. And Fletcher knew firsthand from his department that there was, on these overflights over Russia, these flights where they were banned 10 days in advance of this. It was going to be the biggest military holiday, May 1st, in the Soviet Union. It's a big deal there, and they're not going to have any flights. They're going to stop them. And he said, we're dropping food and things like that to the Tibetans that are escaping from the Chinese. We don't have any role here, but it's too close. You have to fly over the border, and we don't want anything to go wrong. So that the minute he heard that a U-2 had gone down and that the whole U-2 department didn't know about the flight, he explains this, that they started saying, well, who sent it out? And that was a U-2 that was previously crashed and had been repaired, and 4 generals had ordered this flight out. And then he found out that it was given only half a tank of hydrogen, which is the fuel to fly that upper atmosphere. If it got into the deepest part of the Soviet Union, which was going to be an overflight, it was going to go right over the whole Soviet Union. Well, this would be an insult. And, of course, it's exactly what happened. So the story is that this was a designed event like a Gulf of Tonkin, or an incident that you know quite a bit about. I think that the USS Liberty, right? One of these things. The whole thing is a charade, a trick to trick people into whatever. In this case, they did not want the crusade for peace to happen. So when you start saying, well, what are the details? Well, they say he was shot down at, what is his operational altitude, is it 70 or 80,000 feet? Because those U-2 flights, they flew high. And every time I hear somebody parrot, they go, they only go 70,000, 70,000. Well, the MiGs themselves can only go, I think, 56,000 feet, right? And they needed that hydrogen up there because the air is so thin, the engine wouldn't light. So, like you mentioned, Fletcher says, his plane conked out at 70,000 feet, and then it had to fly down, drifting like a glider. The plane's virtually a glider, down to 30,000 feet, where it got into action then. And Soviet MiGs flew and tried to force it to land, and one broke its wing off. And, of course, the thing went down. I mean, Gary Powers wouldn't have ejected. He knew that those things were rigged to blow. So if you read his account, he said, well, I tried to just open the canopy on my own and try to crawl out without hitting the ejection seat, because then if I did that, they were set to blow up the camera, and the pilots knew that. But I think they also figured out that the ejection seat was rigged to blow as well. And if you read the statement from Alan Dulles in his testimony to Congress, right, investigation committee there, that he said that we were very confident there would never be a pilot alive, to be interrogated, right? And of course, Fletcher's a lot more articulate about this. I have, I think, a 1 hour, mini documentary just on the topic that you may have excerpted from. That Fletcher explains it, he's very much more articulate than me, and very well. And the thing is, for Gary Powers Jr. to be saying, well, they shot him down, you have to ask yourself, well, what kind of missile would blow up a plane at 80,000 feet and the plane come down virtually, intact? It would be confetti. It would be blown to smithereens. Do you think a pilot would live, falling from 70,000 feet?
Yeah, I don't think so. Not if it was blown into tiny little pieces and falling from that height. I doubt it. And unless maybe he had practiced, I don't know, halo jumps. I don't even know if they did halo jumps back then. Yeah, they might have, but I don't even think they did. It doesn't sound plausible. To me, what sounded more plausible was what Fletcher had said. And I'm not bashing what Power said, either Gary or his son. In fact, I think his son's a very smart guy. It was a great interview, and he knows a ton of stuff. And if I remember correctly, he even runs the Cold War Museum. But there was something else too. I think it was the camera. He had a dispute with. But regardless, I wonder if Powers, Gary was senior, was. I wonder if he was told after the fact. Like, I wonder if the Powers that shouldn't be, the same people that show all the new presidents the film of that never before seen angle of the grassy knoll. In the Kennedy assassination, and they just I always say after the new presidents are elected, Bill Hicks used to joke about this. After the presidents are elected, they bring them into a room and they show them a film, and it's a never before seen angle, which looks, unmistakably like the grassy knoll, like a shot from where the grassy knoll was, like if you were sitting next to the shooter, shooting the video, and. It just makes one wonder if that's kind of the same situation. If maybe they got to him, if they could get to a president, who can't they get to, right? So I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying you never know. They could have threatened his kids too. His kids were young at the time. They could have threatened his family. That's what they do with a lot of these military guys. I know. I've seen it. They threaten them. You know, do you want to get benefits? Do you want your kids? You want your kids and your wife to have an accident or something? And who knows? I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying it, just putting it out there. I wonder if that's a possibility. What do you think, Len? Do you think that's a possibility? Maybe they threatened Gary Power Sr. and said, you know, do what we tell you, or...
Well, they did more than threaten him. They killed him, you know. His helicopter blew up in midair, right? And he was writing an expose book about the CIA at the time. And he had been telling people, look, I was lied to, and I'm going to tell you what was really going on. He was writing this tell-all book. You know, I think he was a pilot for traffic in Los Angeles. And they said his helicopter ran out of fuel, contrary to the eyewitness reports that said it blew up in midair. So I'm not blaming his son, but I'm saying his son does a disservice by eclipsing the true thing here. That flight, and Gary Powers just happened to be like the pilot, the taxi driver, whatever. He had no role in the game except for he flew a U-2 that some people wanted to be caught by the Soviets, and that's why they took the good camera out and put that old World War II bomber camera in. And I've been at the Space Museum. If you ever see the real pilot, the real Lundahl camera from that U-2, it's huge. It's huge. And you look at the pictures that I have in the documentary I made that's just like on YouTube. You could make a link to it. And, it's not the same camera. I mean, the tail section of the plane's intact. There's so many things, right? You know, I even had an email from a person when the internet was really new, just, you know, in the first year or two, and he said, you know what, I was searching for something. I'm a photographer, and did you know I was there when Gary Powers was caught? And I happened to be at that farm, and I was there to take pictures. And then it wasn't too long till a bunch of generals and all these guys came over, and I started asking him. I said, "Yeah, I know, but do you think he was shot at 70,000 feet, or he bailed out at 1,000 feet and just jumped out to get his parachute open and land? You know, because the plane landed." Yeah, you're right. It wasn't all in one area. It was, there was just a lot of corroboration of not being broken up, by little marbles exploded into confetti falling from 80,000 feet. They didn't have anything that could reach that anyway. Otherwise, they would have been shooting them down all the time. Okay.
Yeah, so good point.
I think the disservice is that Gary's waving the flag that his father was shot at 70,000 feet eclipses even in James Bamford's book. It's not Puzzle Palace, but it's another NSA book. And it says they were listening to the whole event in a listening post outside of Turkey. And he goes on to say, well, at some point, they sent a missile up and they shot him. And then the pilot's following him saying, he's turning. And I thought, gee, how can you turn after you've been shot at 70,000 feet? And, of course, what did happen in reality was they sent a missile up and it hit one of their own men. So they shot one of their own, and that was a real embarrassment. And a pilot named Sergei Mentyakov, who it was his best friend that got killed. He was kind of bitter about the whole thing. He was in a trainer, and he didn't have any fire weapons on it. And they ordered him to kamikaze at 30,000 feet. They said, that plane's got to come down, do whatever you do, kill yourself, And he thought, I'm not killing myself for this. So he just kind of flew in front of Powers and went back and forth until the wash from that, the wake, broke one of Powers' wings off. And the plane starts circling down, like when you break a little glider, you can just imagine it spirals down, right? Well, he wrote about that in a paper. And that's on a documentary that Gary Powers Jr. was on. It's as if he's got his head in the sand and he has to hide from information that's already out there.
Len, I'm going to cut us off because we got the top of the hour break coming up on us already. Wow, man. First hour just flew right by. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Hour number 1 up, hour number 2 coming up. More with Len Osanic when we get back. Check out Black Op Radio. Prouty.org. Make sure you check out his ongoing series, 50 Reasons for 50 Years. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. Today is February 11th, 2013. And tonight my guest is Len Osanic, host of Black Op Radio. You can check out blackopradio.com. Make sure you check out prouty.org. I have told you all about it numerous times. I had Len on the last time. We discussed in depth about Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, and you've heard me mention Colonel Prouty's name tonight. I have very casually referred to him as Fletcher. So if you've heard me say the name Fletcher, I am referring to Colonel Prouty. And again, I urge you to purchase both of his books. And if you can afford to, go over to prouty.org and collect or purchase the collective works, I should say, that Len has put together with all the interviews over the years from Colonel Prouty. Look, honestly, I don't think you're going to get – you can't get much closer to someone who was in it and knows what he's talking about than Colonel Prouty. And of course, there are those who everybody has their detractors, but it's if you actually see the people that talk any smack about him, their argument is completely invalid, and that makes it irrelevant, and therefore you just have to move on. Colonel Prouty is a fountain of knowledge, and it's just a shame he's still not around, because I would have loved to have picked his brain on 9/11. I can only imagine the type of analysis that he would have been able to give us. But it is what it is. So we have the next best thing. We have Len Osanic. Len, welcome back for hour 2.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
And really quick, if people go to prouty.org, right, that's where they can purchase the entire collective works, all the interviews you did with Colonel Prouty? Yeah,
I made a CD-ROM for him. It has both of his books, about 10 hours of audio, about 45 minutes of video, articles, photos, letters, private letters between him and Victor Krulak, Oliver Stone, Jim Garrison, things like that. Anything you wanted to know about Fletcher Prouty, you'll find on that. He wrote a lot of articles for a lot of maybe obscure magazines, and some of the articles he wrote never got published anywhere, but maybe they were too controversial, talking about Flight 007 and things like that, but they're all on there, and you can find them there. The last thing I wanted to say about Gary Powers' flight is that I didn't have anything against Gary Powers Jr. It's just that I thought that since he was his son and just investigating this, and he's kind of, I think, limited by what military people will tell him, that his investigation is somewhat crippled compared to Fletcher Prouty, who worked and lived in the Pentagon at that time and knew the story firsthand. So, it's one thing for someone to say, I've listened to Fletcher and I don't agree. Fine. But when people say, well, like Gary Powers Jr., I think he's wrong, I don't buy it at all. I don't think Fletcher is wrong. And the lesson is that there were, well, he told me that he got a piece of paper with the 4 names on it. And he just didn't want to tell me the names of the people. But he said, those 4 guys, he was told, here are the 4 guys that set the flight up against presidential orders. So that starts to tell you the big picture is who wanted to end the crusade for peace and sabotage it. And this is Eisenhower's turn. And Eisenhower knew so much more about that. Can you imagine any president these days getting up for his farewell address to the nation and warning people, saying that, it's been a great 4 or 8 years, but I've got to warn you about something? I mean, and that's what he did. So, instead of saying...
he was the last one to do that kind of type of farewell address, too. Kennedy didn't get a chance to get a farewell address. And, after that, everybody played ball. So I think Eisenhower was really the last one to speak any type of truth in a farewell address.
And this is what he knew about firsthand. How, like with Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs invasion and that. And it was a CIA operation the whole time, and I think it was meant to fail. That's a different topic, but I'm just saying here with Eisenhower, he had the carpet pulled out from him as well. Who sent this flight up? Why was it sent up? What's the timing? That's the important thing. And he's warning about the industrialized military complex. And if you don't take that into account, it kind of Gary Powers Jr. talking about what he's learned from, well, I have interviewed this admiral, or I've interviewed this general, or, it's not the same to me. It doesn't carry the same weight as the warning that Fletcher is saying. This is even more devious than you think. It's not just that a flight went down, but it was sent up to fail. And it was sent up against presidential orders, because I know that. I went to the White House and argued the point that we can't, the Tibetans, like, we can't just fail them now, right? They need their food and supplies, and they're counting on it, right? I don't have to get into all that. But I would urge people to do a quick YouTube search if they're interested, and find out Fletcher's take on what the real reasons for that flight failing and going down, and the telltale signs that it was an operation. I think I can leave it at that.
Okay, well said, well put. I want to cover a few other things. We could let's cover the other big thing, and if we have time for the few smaller things, we can. If not, there's always future broadcasts. Bobby Kennedy's assassination. I know you have researched not only Jack's assassination, but I know you've researched Bobby's. I know you've researched Martin Luther King Jr.'s. You are a well-versed researcher in all of these assassinations. So I can pick your brain about not just about Jack's, but about the other two as well. So Bobby's. What would you say is the biggest red flag? If you did 50 reasons for 50 years, with Bobby's assassination, what would you say in your eyes, like the magic bullet with Jack, what's the one huge red flag, the straw that breaks the camel's back in your eyes when it comes to Bobby's assassination?
Well, that would be the coroner, Los Angeles coroner, Thomas Noguchi, stating categorically that Bobby Kennedy was killed from 3 gunshots from behind with powder burns 0 to 2 inches. Somebody was standing right behind Bobby, fired the first shot, Bobby starts to fall, fires the second shot, falls a little more, fires the third one. So lower back, shoulder, back of the head, bang, bang, bang. Meanwhile, Sirhan is a distraction. He thinks he was hypno-programmed. He thinks somebody took him to a target range that afternoon, and he was supposed to be doing firing range practice. And I think that he was. Somebody whispered the idea was. I think they said lots of cream, lots of sugar, and that sent him off. He was obviously hypno-programmed, and I don't think we have time in this little episode here to go through all that. But there has been a lot of people who've done investigations ahead of time. But for me, the number one thing is when you hear that Bobby Kennedy shot and the coroner says powder burns indicate between 0, like the gun is right up against your back, or up to 2 inches away, because they test fired and they could find, powder burns leave a residue, at a logarithmic rate, right up against it, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5, they can tell. So when you find out he's been shot from behind, who was standing right behind him, and how did they get those shots off at him, right? And then the second thing is a photographer named Scott Enyart was in the pantry and taking pictures of the whole thing, and his pictures were confiscated by the LA police, and man, those pictures show the whole thing going down, and of course that's why they were lost or stolen on the way to the courthouse. It's an amazing story that Scott Enyart has to tell, but those are.
It wasn't the messenger robbed at gunpoint. It was being sent via messenger service or whatever, and the guy that was delivering the photos or whatever was robbed.
Yeah. I mean, it's so unbelievable. When they were being subpoenaed, they say, "Okay, bring these pictures back to the courthouse." He was suing them. He said, "Look, the Zapruder film is worth $16 million now. I want my pictures you've had for 20 years. Give them to me. They must be worth even half that, $8 million. So they said, okay. The courier company says, oh, we've been robbed. And they said, well, what happened? Well, I did get a phone call saying from the district attorney's office asking, what time is the courier coming? What is the route he's taking? And what color is the car he's driving in? Right? The guy was on the stand and saying, running a courier company for like 25 years, I've only been asked, when will it be here and how much does it cost? No one has ever asked, what route are you taking and what color is the car, and what make of the car. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Unless they were planning on jumping the driver, the driver and robbing him at gunpoint. I mean, that alone right there, ding, 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 ding. If I was a detective, right? If I was a policeman, I would be like, pulling out my pad and what was that name again? Writing that down. Really? What was the name of the delivery service? Really? And what was that guy's name again that said that? Okay, and then I would go call him and ask him, sir, excuse me, could you please tell me again, blah, 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 the information? And I would want to, that's something I would want to look into. But people don't look at that. That's a big red flag right there. That's a huge red flag. They wanted to know the make and model of the car and the route it was going, just in case it got a flat.
Yeah, Skip Miller, right? That's the DA's office. That's the prosecutor, right? On the case. And that's where the phone call came from. I mean, that guy should have been disbarred right there. I mean, it should have been front page news. You would have been calling for a real investigation after that. Not a word, I guess people don't care.
Yeah, well, people buy into the whole. They buy into the lone shooter theory, and they don't want to look further because the government's offered them this easy to digest package. Lone gunman pissed off about. In this case, it was Bobby's promise of sale to jets to Israel, and Perfect Patsy, a Palestinian that's here in the States. And I mean, Sirhan was so easily programmable. You look at that kid, and now he's old, but at the time, when they did it, he was still a young kid, and I forget who it was. It was one of the guys on his defense team. In fact, in Shane's movie RFK Must Die, you see one of the guy talking about it. They were in there with one of the, I guess he was a shrink, and he was he had hypnotized Sirhan. They wanted to see how easily he could be hypnotized, and they hypnotized him and programmed him to. I think it was when he scratched his nose that Sirhan would climb the bars of his cell like a monkey, and he did it. So, I mean, he was very easily programmed. He was very susceptible to that form of mind control and that type of manipulation. Then you have the testimony of, I can't remember her name right now because I don't have my notes about Bobby's assassination in front of me, but the lady that saw the lady that saw the girl in the polka dot dress, and she saw her run down the back and say something that we just shot Kennedy. Yeah,
Sandy. Serrano?
Yeah, that's her. Sandra Serrano. Yeah. And she was interrogated, and they kept bringing in different polka dot dresses into the room of different colors, and it was black and white, but different varying, maybe 5 black dresses and 5 white dresses, and the 5 black ones had white polka dots, and the white ones had black polka dots, and they were of different varying sizes. And then it was, what was this dress? Was it this dress? Was it this dress? And they kept showing her all different types of dresses to confuse her. And then the one guy, Hank Hernandez, there's audio of him, for the love of Kennedy. You're like, really? If someone threw that at you today, you'd be like, dude, really, this is very poorly written B-rated movie script. But back then, and especially she was a young girl, and she said, she just wanted to be left alone. But she never changed her story. Shane went and tracked her down and interviewed her for his film, and her story was the same. And they browbeat her. So explain that away. And there you go. Right by definition, her story destroys the official lone gunman theory because you have the girl running out of the back. And what did Sirhan say? One of the last things he remembered was drinking coffee with a pretty girl. And then the next thing he knows, he's in the pantry. So, makes one wonder. And he was very, like I said, he was very easily manipulated and very susceptible to that type of manipulation. You could see it for yourself. But ladies and gentlemen, obviously, Len and I couldn't fill in a half hour or even an hour. You have to go watch Shane's movie RFK Must Die, and he's got a companion book that goes with it that you need to have so that you can read it. And research Bobby's murder, because there's a lot of shady stuff. How about the fact that they lost the ceiling tiles, Len, from the basement where the bullets went into the ceiling tiles? That's a huge piece of evidence. Oh, we threw it out and destroyed it. We didn't think it was important. What? Why did you not think it was important? That's like this. Where's the windshield from the limousine? Oh, we destroyed it and replaced it. Why? Where's all the debris from 9/11? Oh, we sold it to China. Do you see an ongoing, pattern here? This repetitive pattern? I do.
Yeah, they keep pulling it off if people don't learn. If they don't learn to question government, and you hope it's not as tyrannical as Alex Jones would report, but yet, I think he's one end of the spectrum. I think like Mae Brussel used to say, if like 5% of what we're talking about is true, we should all be worried.
Right. If even 2% of what we were talking about, we talk about is true, you should be crapping in your pants right now. Okay. Yeah. Because none of it's good.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Dude, I think one of the biggest things with the whole assassinations, whether it's Jack, Bobby, or even Martin, people don't want to admit that their government would do that. Our government would never kill him. Why would they honor him with statues and everything else? Well, that appeases a lot of people, as it also enables them to control his message and the people that listen to his message, right? And enables them to control it's a way of harnessing what he was and the power of his message and using it for nefarious deeds. And of course, it also helps them cover up and steer the official story away from the fact that a civil trial in 1999 found out or I guess ended, you could say, with the fact that the government did it. So, but instead, let's make a statue. Let's do this. Let's do that. They do this with all these people. They've done it with Martin. They've done it with Bobby. They've done it with Jack. They make them these icons and these great people, but the media never dives into things really deep, do they? And you don't see the Men Who Killed Kennedy series anymore on TV. When I was a kid, that was a fixture. That was another thing that used to fuel my Kennedy assassination research. And my desire to learn more about it when I was a kid. That's why I had to read books, because there weren't really radio shows like this when I was a kid, and there weren't a lot of documentaries out about it. There was a couple of the older stuff. I found Chirac's movie about Bobby, but that stuff was even harder to come by than it is now, because YouTube wasn't around when I was a kid, so you had to read books and stuff. And when the History Channel would air the Men Who Killed Kennedy series, that was a big deal. And now all of a sudden, after was it 2003, ever since they complained about the Johnson one, all of them are gone, like to the memory hole. You never see them again. Where'd they go? And not that I agree with everything that was said in all of them, but they brought a lot of good information to light. And at the very least, they made you think outside the box that Oswald didn't do it by himself, right?
Yeah, or that Oswald didn't do it.
Yeah, at all. Period. End of story. I don't think. Look, I've seen enough evidence. I don't think Lee did it, but that's. I mean, that's because I've done a lot of research on it. Once anybody does a certain amount or enough research, you'll come to the conclusion that Oswald didn't do it. He's a complete patsy, and it was definitely the government that did it. I mean, look, Oswald wasn't in the official story says he was behind him in the book depository. Yet the kill shot comes from the front. And I can't remember his name, the dude from ABC News. I can never remember his name. He died of cancer a few years afterwards. But his famous thing is they did a JFK special after Oliver Stone's movie came out. And he was like, back and to the left is not really indicative of where the shot came from. And I'm like, really? So the shot came from behind, and the official story is the shot came from behind, and as it passed through the front of the head, the exhaust gases pushed his head forward or backward. Like, really? Come on. You know what I mean? It would have hit him in the back of the head, and it would have pushed his head forward. That's not how it would have happened. But let's not pay attention to physics, or let's not pay attention to anybody that's ever shot anything. You know what? As a test, somebody take like an old video from Arlie Ermey when he was on the History Channel before they fired him for his opinions about Obama. Go look up any of the videos and look when Arlie Ermey would shoot a watermelon with a rifle. Right, and he doesn't take on the Kennedy assassination, but go look at something close to the power of what Kennedy was supposedly hit with. Watch what happens when he shoots with a rifle, even if it's an AR-15, .223. Watch what happens to the watermelon. A lot of times when he hits it in the front, the bullet goes, phoom, makes a tiny little hole. But what happens to the back of the watermelon? And what happens to the watermelon? It goes with the motion of the bullet, right? So if you take that example and you look at Kennedy's noodle, and you look at his head as the watermelon, which way did the head blow out? Oh, the back half of the head blew off, right? Which way did the head go when he got shot? Back and to the left. Oh, so it went on a little bit of an angle there, huh? Kind of shot backwards. Oh, interesting. Well, I guess that would mean the shot came from the front. Anybody's ever shot anything understands this basic concept. The government would have you believe that the shot came from behind. And you got Gerald Ford, who changed the rear wound and moved it. And then there's the throat wound in the front that nobody talks about. They ended up destroying that evidence when they did what do you call it, the tracheotomy, and they or tracheostomy, I guess, if it's you're dead, and they cut it open. There's a lot of shady things. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a break coming up. Don't go anywhere. Half hour left with Len Osanic. Check out his websites, prouty.org, blackopradio.com. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment here on tonight's broadcast. Make sure you stay tuned tonight. Right after my show gets off, you have another 3 hours of live broadcasting. That's right. I said 3, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ryan Brooks officially goes to 3 hours today from 2. So congratulations, Ryan. It is well deserved. I know you've been wanting the third hour. You deserve it, my friend. You bust your butt. You do a great broadcast. Congratulations and good luck on your maiden voyage on the 3 hour broadcast today. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ryan will be on. Don't go anywhere. Live radio till at least 3 o'clock in the morning here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. All right, final segment with my guest tonight, Len Osanic. And again, ladies and gentlemen, blackopradio.com, prouty.org. Go to blackopradio.com. I urge you to. And if you want to see something really cool, and I had asked Len about this during the break, and I wanted to plug this, so I'm going to have him discuss it a little bit and break it down. But if you go over to blackopradio.com, under the archived shows, and you click on it, you'll see... Let me go back so I can give you the exact title. When you click on it, it'll come up about halfway back, about middle of the page. It'll say Len's in bold black lettering. It says Len's favorite archived interviews, comma, books, comma, movies, comma, and video. Click on that, and it'll bring up the page, and it's got the books that Len would recommend, videos and stuff, series, things he would recommend. Basically, if you trust him and you respect what he has to say, which I do, then this is like if I said to Len, hey, where should I go to get more information? This is him directing you down that path. And I wanted to cover this because, I always try to offer solutions, and I always want to, even when the guest and I are talking about things that happened 35 or 40 years ago, this all dovetails into what we're talking about today and what's going on today. And I like to offer solutions and some positivity. I don't like to just say, yes, it's negative, bad, without putting some solutions out there. And I think Len's page here is one way of a solution, because you can go educate yourself. That's the beginning of this. Okay, you can't comprehend all of this vast conspiracy that's being put forward against us. And you can't. You can't. I can't even think of another word to put it. There's just no way you can't comprehend it without doing hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of research, and it's going to end up adding up into months, which will end up into years, and that's just the way it is. You're going to have to cut out regular television and stuff. If you want to understand completely what's going on against you, then you need to turn off your TV, you need to stop going to see crappy Hollywood movies, and you need to start to educate yourself. And Len's page here is one way to do that, because you have his picks of different books and stuff, but then not only that, at the bottom you have his best recommended Black Op radio shows that he's done, some of his favorite interviews, as it were. So, Len, let's get into your favorites page here. Where do you want to start? Let's start with the recommended Black Op radio shows that you've done. Let's start there. Why are those particular broadcasts your favorites? And let's start, I guess, from the top down with number 12. Why are these your favorite broadcasts?
I think the information is the most shocking. That's why. And I have, I've done 615 shows or something, So this is only 4. It's not like a top 10 or top 20, It's just here's 4. We were talking about Scott Enyart, the photographer in the Ambassador Hotel the night that Bobby Kennedy was shot, right? So this interview with him, show 12, I interviewed him, I think, a couple of other times over the years. But this one interview in particular will just shock you. I labeled it here, shocking and disturbing. Okay? So, Scott Enyart. The second one is Zachary Sklar. He was Jim Garrison's editor, and he was a screenwriter with Oliver Stone for the film. So when Oliver Stone was very busy, he said, I want to do a movie on Jim Garrison. So I want you to write me a screenplay and make it like 500 pages. Don't leave out anything. Then we'll get together and we'll start cutting back and we'll edit it and we'll turn it into a movie. So hearing Zachary Sklar describe how they made the film JFK is very interesting. Another one, April Oliver, the producer of The Valley of Death. It was a CNN special about Operation Tailwind that was showing how about Vietnam veterans were being hunted down and killed. Americans had deserted. They had lost faith in what they were fighting for, and they just started living with the natives. And I think certain American interests said, we've got to do away with these guys because they know our tactics now. So they went out and sprayed nerve gas over certain villages wherever they could find if they thought there were any American deserters there, just trying to kill everybody, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. And, of course, they were fired over that story, but it was just when CNN had been bought out, Ted Turner had owned it, and then he was selling it out, and somehow under the radar they had this documentary going where nobody knew about it, and then it went, oh, my God, how could this happen that here's a report showing just how bad the evil empire is America, right? Is this what we do? If people, look at the suicides now rate. I think there's more American servicemen committing suicide than being killed by adversaries. The numbers are staggering. But anyway, and then of course, another early show was Jean Hill. And she was a guest for an hour, and she had such a pleasant time. She stayed on another hour and a half. I remember at the end of the hour saying, look, Jean, is there anything I didn't get to that you wanted to bring up? And she goes, well, I've had such a good time talking to you that, yeah, there is a few things that I've never told anybody, and I might as well get this off my chest and discuss it here. Seems like a good as place as any. And so that went an extra half hour. So Jean Hill was a witness to the Kennedy assassination. So those are 4 shows that if you're new to Black Op Radio, you listen to that, you'll get a quick history lesson. And, of course, I recommend some videos that you can find on YouTube, like The History of Oil, Zeitgeist, Who Killed John O'Neill, Christopher Hitchens, just a lecture. The Chicago Plot, there's articles and reviews of Reclaiming History, which is a book by Bugliosi. And then I have a few films in obviously, I guess, JFK and The Man Who Killed Kennedy and Executive Action and The Parallax View. And I interviewed Lawrence Singer, who wrote The Parallax View, and that was quite a coup for me. I've been trying to find him for at least 5 years. So there's 1 or 2 people that I've been trying to find and get an email or contact address. One is a writer named Skip Woods, and he wrote he wrote the screenplay or the book, or I'm not quite sure which is which, but it's called Operation Swordfish, or just Swordfish. With you know that film?
Yep.
Yeah, I've been intrigued about that film, and I've been trying to contact him, but he doesn't have a website or anything. It doesn't seem like there's any contact on the web form. But his name is Skip Woods out of LA. If anybody knows of him, drop me an email. I'd love to get his email address. And then, of course, going up my top favorite, books. And there's no sense naming 100. There's just a couple. But one I would like to mention, if anyone listening has already read The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty, there is an addendum to that, which is not well known. And it's called Understanding Special Operations and Their Impact on the Vietnam Era. This is an interview done by David Radcliffe with Fletcher Prouty discussing The Secret Team. So he says, listen, if I read between the lines, what are you telling us here in The Secret Team? And this whole book is a reflection of that idea. So that if you enjoyed, anything by Fletcher Prouty, there is another book out, not written by him, but was basically a transcript of 4 days of interviews. And that is a must-have.
Yeah, I want to get Garrison's book On the Trail of the Assassins myself.
Oh, you have to get that. You have to get it.
I mean, I have the PDF version, but I want to get a physical copy. I have PDFs of a lot of these older books, but I've made it my mission to go out and get a physical copy of everything, because they could light off an EMP blast and away goes the PDFs, but I still have my physical copy that I can read by candlelight. So,
you know what I enjoy these days is audiobooks, and I just ended up getting the new Mark Lane book, The Last Word. And I never have time to sit down and read and all that, but I have my iPhone with me all the time. So I just ordered the audiobook version of The Last Word.
Where can one get audio versions of these books? Because I know a lot of people have asked me that question, and I really don't know where to send them. I mean, I know you can probably maybe find here or there on Amazon, but a lot of people can't really find it. They can't seem to find the like one location to get most of these books in one spot. Where would you recommend they go?
I don't have a recommendation. I'm constantly frustrated with the way they do that. Every website says, download this book for $7.95. And I go, okay, great. I'll take the audiobook for that, $10 or less, no problem. Then they get there and they want you to sign up for the Book of the Month Club and order 12 books. I don't want that. I mean, literally, it took me half an hour to order this book a couple of days ago, and I was so pissed off I almost didn't. But because I'm going to be interviewing Mark Lane again, I thought, no, I can read his book, but I want to have the audiobook, because when I'm driving back and forth or whatever, I can listen to this and get double the information from the time that I have to read a book. So I ended up buying it for $25. It was, you don't want this, you don't want that. No, I only want the audiobook. Now, saying that, the unabridged versions are quite long. This one is 11 hours, and I feel that's worth it. I thought, okay, $25, but you're going to have a well-spoken, articulate guy read the book, and it's almost 12 hours, right? That's
pretty good, though. That's not bad. $25 for an audiobook. Yeah.
And I bought the other one. I hate to interrupt, but I bought Jim Douglas's book too, and that's over 18 hours. It might even be 21 hours, and it's the best investment you'll ever make. If you get the book JFK and the Unspeakable, you can get it on audiobook, and they send it to you as MP3s. And it was just phenomenal. I just loved it.
I mean, you see, I like that kind of stuff because you can put it on a car, cell phone, whatever, and cruise, stereo, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And while you're doing other work, you can just sit and listen to it. And it allows you to absorb the information, and still you can do other things. And then when you read the book, if you read the physical book too, it kind of adds, the two of them complement one another. And then, if there's something that maybe if you read the book first, but you didn't have time to finish the chapter and you're kind of stuck and you haven't gotten a chance to physically pick it up, when you get to that point in the audiobook, you'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Or if you do it the other way around, if you read the book after you've listened to the audiobook, it'll meld together. that's one of my biggest things is I try to find a good spot to get the audiobooks from. And like you said, you have, you'll end up having issues like, you'll go to a place to buy it and, you got to click through 15 or 20 different things just to get your book. And it's annoying. There's really not one good spot. Like I said, there's some here and there on Amazon, but few and far between where you can find a book like this. Something like one of Mark Lane's books, or maybe on the Jim Garrison's book on the tale of the I can't speak tonight, On the Trail of the Assassins. Perhaps if you could find Fletcher's book, something like that on audiobook. Finding stuff like that is hard enough to begin with. And then finding a good audiobook version of it where, like you said, the person speaks eloquently as they're speaking, and it's very, you don't want someone rushing. So if it's done well, I don't mind paying $25 for it because I'll have it. But I just don't want it to be like Apple does, where they put the copyright thing on it, and the only thing it works on is your one Apple device, and then it's a pain in the butt to transfer it from device to device while you're listening to it. If I pay $25 for it, I want the audiobook, and that's it. I want to be left alone to be able to put it like on a memory stick and put it in my car if I have to. So because that's where, like, a lot of times if you're driving or whatnot, you waste a lot of time, right? Instead of turning to listen to the stupid radio and Rush Limbaugh or whoever happens to be on your airwaves, you can tune into the audiobooks. That's actually a really good idea, Len. I'm glad you brought that up. And I didn't realize, by the way, that Understanding Special Operations was a side book that, like a compendium, I guess, if you will, whatever, an addendum to the Secret Team. But I'm now going to have to go get that book.
Yeah. It actually, you can read it online. Dave Radcliffe has posted it.
The whole thing?
So you can search that out and find it, and you can start reading tonight right now. But if you want the actual book, you can order it from him. And he didn't trust any publishing company, so he just self-published. I think he made 1,000 copies, and he's probably got maybe about 200 left.
Oh, I know where I'll be going tonight. I know where I'll be. Is there a...
Yeah, I sell them at Products.
Oh, you have all of it? You have, do you have Garrison's book there and stuff too, or what do you go? Well, we'll go over that really quick. Plug your Products page. If you have some of the books and stuff available there, tell everybody what they can get there. On
my Products page, you can order my shows, all my shows year by year on a direct download. So you can get 1 year of my shows for $10, like 2000, 2001, 2002. I have a couple of special interviews. I have a 7-hour interview with John Armstrong, the author of Harvey and Lee. His book is very rare, and he doesn't give interviews, so I was lucky to get a couple of days with him. And out of 10 hours, I edited it down to 7. So that is there. All my interviews with Jim Douglas, who wrote JFK and the Unspeakable. There's quite a few. I bundled them. Doug Horn, who's done some good work inside the Assassination Records and Review Board. And then Colonel Prouty. So on the downloads, you can get things delivered right to your computer, high-quality MP3s. I did a CD for William Pepper, who's the attorney working for Saran. He writes anti-war poetry, and I have that. Just take a look at it under Products, so you can find anything. And then you can also order. How much is the collected works of Fletcher? All his stuff. $30 for the collected work CD. Now I have other things. I have every time I went to Washington D.C. there, Alexandria. Actually, I went and videotaped him and interviewed him. So I also sell a whole bunch of DVDs of him, and but anyway, on this page, if you go to Products, the Understanding Special Operations book is there. It's $15, right? So, and I think it's like $3 for shipping. So it's not that much, but it's a very, very good book. And if you had any interest in it, that's what you need to get. It is the companion to it. And Dave just did a great interview with Fletcher, so I highly recommend having that book. And I mean, I can't praise it enough.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I'm literally, ladies and gentlemen, look, I wouldn't say this on air if you know I wasn't going to do this. Literally, when I get off, I'm gonna grab it. It's only $15. If you've got a copy of The Secret Team, if you've got a copy of his other book, JFK, you might as well grab Understanding Special Operations. It'll go with it goes with The Secret Team, and it'll help you understand the information that Colonel Prouty's put out there. And I'm literally going to buy it. Look, it says you even have it listed. That's the word I couldn't get out of my head. Companion. I couldn't think of it. Sometimes, you know how it is. Sometimes you have so much stuff going around in your head, it's hard to find the word you were looking for. It's a companion to The Secret Team. So I recommend you pick it up. I myself will be grabbing it when I get off air. I have to leave the studio and go grab my wallet in the other room, and I will be literally purchasing a copy. And the reason I'm going to purchase a copy and not say to Len, give me the book, because I want to support Len's work. In order to keep him on air and keep all the stuff he's done. I mean, he literally had to fly to go interview Colonel Prouty and all this other stuff, and it does cost money to put this stuff together and be able to make that kind of information available to people. And I know how much effort and energy and time and money I spend doing what I do just to make stuff free for people. And Len's stuff, the production quality on his videos and everything else, it is superior to the video stuff I do, and his stuff's a lot more in depth, especially the Colonel Prouty archives and stuff. So look, I urge you, okay, if you can afford it, support him. Go over there, pick it up, go to the products page. If you have somebody's birthday coming up and you know they like, say you know somebody in your family that likes quote-unquote conspiracy stuff, you can go to my site and download whatever you want for free for them. But I suggest you go over to Len's site. If you want to get them something for their birthday, go over to Len's site, go over to the products page, and go pick up anything there. Period. End of story. And I tell you that, look, I'm doing it, okay? You should do it. It's the way it is. You need to do this. We need to support one another. And as I said the last time Len was on, you know, I plugged him and I support him. Look, his research has helped me learn a lot of stuff. You know, because of his interviews with Colonel Prouty, listening to what Colonel Prouty had to say, I've learned a lot. And because of that information, I've been able to bring information forward to all of you, the listeners. So, you know, it's like paying it forward. It's, you know, it's coming coming full circle, if you will. So just go get whatever. And if you're going to get the book, you might as well pick it up from him. You can go right to the site. There's only like I would say between his and whatever David Radcliffe has, I guess there's only a couple hundred left. I would pick it up while they're still available. I mean, self-published. It's obviously something that's going to be worth something because there's only a. Well,
you know, I do that as a favor for Dave. I don't make anything on it. So when you order it, Dave doesn't take PayPal. He has a great aversion to that and credit cards and things. So I won't get into that. But I said, look, I'll advertise it for you. So the reason it's $15 is that's, you know, whatever it cost him. So he's got the book. You're going to get it mailed right from him. You know, and on your email, if anybody orders it, you get it autographed if you want. But they're coming right from the author in this case.
That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
See, and that's an example of us helping each other. He doesn't really want to deal with PayPal and stuff, and you know that people need to see the information in the book, so you offer to, you know, be that gap and bridge that gap for him. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how we're going to win this. Again, taking care of each other, helping each other out, and helping get the information out. Len, we're out of time. Thank you so much again for coming on tonight's broadcast.
How can we be out of time? I just started.
Right? That's exactly how I feel. Ladies and gentlemen, check out Len's broadcast, blackopradio.com, prouty.org. I love you all. Remember, the solutions to our problems are an inside job, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you soon, and I will see you again tomorrow night. Special broadcast, 11 p.m. after Joe goes off air. I will be live from 11 to midnight. See you then.